Welcome to this new episode of the Learn Buteyko podcast. Today we are going to address teenage years from the Buteyko perspective. We are going to discuss some of the most important issues teenagers are confronting today and how the Buteyko method can help. Would you like to know what the perspective of more than 100 years of teaching the Buteyko method is on this crucial stage of a person's development? Well, then listen to this chapter and its really interesting segues, including a siege of Leningrad. You'll think this wouldn't have anything to do with a breathing method. Well, that is why this podcast is necessary. I hope you enjoy it as much as we did making it. Okay, so today's podcast is about teenagers, but I wanted to pick your mind on actual cases that you have been able to help with teenagers. What are the problems that they're experiencing? What are the solutions? What are the results? What's maybe the history of what you have seen? In the last podcast, we spoke with Martha and with Vladimir about their own teenage years where all those illnesses like literally didn't exist. Maybe there was one person and it was like such rarity, yeah? And I find this very interesting because everybody's talking about how much in better health we are. And actually what seems to be the case when you look at the root cause of illnesses is that that's actually not true at all.
Well, I can say something about having watched teenagers over the years, over the decades, since I was in the early 80s.
That's right. You've been a teacher, right, Martha?
Yeah. So I know for a fact that concentration level is much poorer now, level of agitation. Their core strength is very poor. Fewer of them can climb trees and ropes. Flat feet, hugely overweight, all kinds of hormonal problems. And they're very sensitive emotionally, get anxious very easily. And there's a lot of conflict between them and the adult community, and it's getting worse over time. What I find working with teenagers now is that they relax a lot more, they become more independent thinking, more self-contained, not so influenced by other people of their own age. And they're more able to communicate with their family from, getting stronger, physically more capable. They're sleeping lots of hours in the morning. They wake up quite refreshed. They're not, because then, they're known for staying in bed in the morning and not getting up. Well, that actually stops after they've been practicing for a while. So they go through huge change and they're able to be effective adult people and quite competent and able to manage themselves much more easily once they've got their maximum pauses up. That's what I've seen.
You mentioned something very interesting, which is that teenagers tend to want to integrate. It's absolutely essential for them to have this sense of belonging, and they try to fit into the group. But at the same time, it's the age in which they have to start thinking for themselves, yeah? So it seems, for some people it might seem strange, and it would be great if you could explain as to why this happened, that this has an effect on their capacity for thinking, their capacity for relationships, and how come that a breathing method can bring this about?
If you breathe deeply, the level of anxiety increases hugely. They react to other people around them, and they're frightened of being different. They're frightened of having their own independent thinking. But as the control pause goes up, that anxiety comes off. And the synapsing between the neurons and the brain cells improves. And they start thinking more logically and less emotionally. They don't get so overwhelmed. They're under a huge amount of pressure. Over the last 2 decades, they've been put under more and more pressure to follow certain formulae from schooling or demands from families, and of course that goes along with financial pressure from the parents. Also, the parents are exhausted. They can't really put the attention into their children. They'll do anything to get them off their back, get them out of the house, get them away because they're exhausted. Because you've got families where you've got to have 2 two breadwinners in order to survive financially, whereas when I was a child there was one breadwinner and the mother was at home, or vice versa.
Very interesting. One thing that caught my attention powerfully, so, and it's not just to talk about the pill itself, it's like they're very medicated as well. So when I was a teenager, this was unheard of.
Yeah, well, it changes the physiology. I mean, Christopher would answer this question better than me, probably, because I know that it's, from Buteyko's perspective, it's not a good idea to mess about with hormones. What do you think, Christopher? I mean,
you can tell which girls are on the pill and which are not. You might be wrong sometimes, right? But usually you'd be wrong when you say they're not on the pill, but they are. But the ones who you say, oh, that girl's for sure on the pill, she'll be on the pill, you know. And there are some which look really good, and you might say, oh, maybe she's not on the pill, but she is on the pill. But the ones who look like they're on the pill, act like it, look like it. I can only say this. I hope it's not taken in the wrong way. Have you looked at some people, and if they were a photograph or a drawing, it looks like they've been smudged a little bit. It's when you look at them, it's like they're out of focus a little bit. They're not sharp. I don't know what it is. I mean, I've mentioned a few times, there's a coffee shop, I don't know if it still exists, on Bondi Beach. And you go there, have a cup of coffee, and you can get a very good view if you get the right table. And it's a very large beach. And everybody's walking around just in their bathers, just in their swimming costumes, maybe a towel or not, hats, whatever. Everyone just walks around barefoot. And you just sit there having a coffee and you look at the passing parade. And behind you is a wall of all these photos of Bondi Beach during the different generations. 1930, 1950, 1970, you know. And then you look at all the photos from 1930 and all the guys are like, you're like all this, you know. And all the women, even the fat ones, have got a shape which goes like this, right? Even the fat women look like a big cello, and the skinny girl look like a violin, right? But not now. Now they look like a pear shape. Now the shape of the body is very different. Extremely different. And you look at the photo, you look at the people. You look at the photos, you look at the people. Say, it's not the same race. Not the same race. We always knew, like for example, in the Philippines, if you go to the Philippines, everybody's bow-legged. The whole country's bow-legged because of rickets. They just didn't get enough vitamin whatever, and everybody has a slightly crooked knees or whatever. And in Australia, everyone was quite strong and big. And the only people who weren't big and strong were usually European immigrants, unless they were Dutch or German, in which case they kind of looked even bigger and stronger than the Australians. But if they were from like UK or whatever, you always knew, like pale and, you know, a little bit, not good, not in good health, not good stock, you know. And the Australians were always looking very strong and a heavier build. And then as the years have gone by, they've all become yard asses, big fat asses, and big fat flat feet, and longer faces. I don't know what it is. I mean, I just look, you know, and you look at from one's memory, and you know, photos and so forth, and it looks very different. When I first came to Thailand, you didn't see anyone fat. Very seldom you saw a fat person. Now it's extremely common.
It's interesting what you mentioned with this image about the photograph, that it looks like it's kind of blurred, because one of the things that the Buteyko method does consistently is that it changes the face of the person. It's just simply your physiology changes, so your physiognomy changes, and you get like a much more open, luminous expression is just a symptom of your physiology. You're more alive, and you come across as more alive. So what are the things that you see in the behavior? So what are the marks of a teenager having the pill? Because maybe there's a teenager who's listening and they're taking the pill and they're not even aware that something is happening in their physiology and even in their psychology. And yet you're saying, I can tell from the behavior, from how they look.
Well, it's to do with, it's a hormonal change. As far as I understand it, Irene, I don't know if I'm correct, but I think I understand it that the body actually is pregnant when you're on the pill.
It's like the hormonal system is ruled by another external force. I had the experience of taking the pill for some weeks, and I felt like I was not myself then. It was like something foreign came and captured my force, or something ruled my body out of my own physiology. And this was completely affecting my mind and the way I could be myself and relax into my core being. That is what I can say.
But it's perfectly understandable if you think about it.
Yes.
You've got this system there whose job it is to organize the creation of another body and to look after it and feed it and manage it. And it's quite a big job, actually. It's not a simple job. And so this is a very complicated, very big system. And then it's your primary role as a human being, or one of the primary roles, is to reproduce. It's quite a strong mechanism. And you muck around with that. And what do you get? Well, you're going to get some, I don't know if they've got the technology, maybe they can just turn it off somewhere, like a little switch, kick. No, it seems they have to derail it on many levels.
You go kind of dull.
Yes, we all agree on that. I just wanted to share my experience with a few adults, adolescents which I worked with. And they were amazed by the results. They had very easily observed changes. Have in mind Nicola, who said, it's amazing how breathing can affect you. And I did not anymore need vitamins and all these supplements that I'm taking to go to the gym and have muscles. Now I can have control over my training without all the additives, of taking stuff. And after I'm going out and I'm drinking, I can be sober very easily. So they liked all these hacks, all these tricks of taking control of their life. So it's very important to tell them that they're not crazy, they want control and they may have it. And there are tricks for that. And also the stamina they gained. And we have another girl that she's an athlete, and she could not train because she had got asthma after training. And now she by herself, and I congratulated her for that, found out the way, without even doing the intermediate course with Vladimir, to train while holding her breathing. And she implements the practice in her life, and she sees results immediately. So this kind of control in such an early age is precious for them.
When I lived in Indonesia, I was a drunk. Yes, it's true. I went out every night. The first time about 5 o'clock in the afternoon to watch the sunset. Then we go home. Then we go for dinner somewhere. Then we go back home again, have a few drinks about 10 o'clock. And then we go to clubbing and parties around Kuta and so forth. And I would come home at about 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning, like drunk. Most days, actually. And I was talking to Stelmatsky about this. And he said, I can give you some advice, what to do. And so I would not go to sleep when I got home. Because if you drink and sleep, it's very bad. So I would get home about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, sometimes even later, but usually before sunrise. And then I would stay up watching the BBC News. And then I drank coffee and watched the news on cable, because we had this international cable. And I'm drinking coffee and I'm watching the news till about, I reckon 7 o'clock in the morning. The sun is up already. And I am still hanging on, right? With a very strong Balinese coffee and the news. And then I would get a bit sleepy. And then I would sleep like beautiful for 3 hours. Wake up, no hangover. Go for a walk down the beach. Have breakfast, do this, do that. Everything is fine. And I knew at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm going down a little bit. A little nap for another 2 hours. No hangover. All my friends that I was drinking with last night, they all dead. So I had two groups of friends, my nighttime friends and my daytime friends. And they never met each other because one lot are recreational, drug-free, alcoholic creatures, and the other group, normal people, family people, and so forth. And nobody knew that I would visit people. I even did workshops. They don't know that I'm in 4 o'clock in the morning. You know.
Barton, you should organize workshop for alcoholics.
I'm actually joking.
You would like to live longer? You would like to enjoy alcohol? Yeah, go see and follow Buteyko method. Because how Christopher described, it's like happy life.
Is it true or not, Vladimir?
It's true.
You had a double life.
Yeah.
Yes.
And happy.
Vladimir was talking about the other day that some of the treatments of Buteyko in near Chernobyl, where you were, like actually implied the drinking of a little bit of alcohol. So alcohol actually calms your breathing, makes your breathing shallow. The problem is
yes, it does. It does. It does. It's the rebound effect that you've got to watch. Sorry, Vladimir.
Yes, that's right. At the same time, when so complicated, chains, with bad stuff, immune system can't break apart. Alcohol can help immune system to break apart. Then to break into small parts, Yes, big poison. Buteyko said, what? You can drink a little bit alcohol and then you should do practice. People, when they were scared with radiation, they could do. Because they were scared of death. That's very good to stimulation.
If you get to master that, it could actually be of some help in some cases. That's very interesting.
What Buteyko said, opposite to Western habit, because he said, if you like to be drunk, you should drink alcohol, right? No eat, no food, no eating. When you're hungry, you should stop drinking and start eating. You should not mix up, what he said. Unfortunately, for Western people, it's a bit unusual way, to my knowledge.
Yeah, the advice is always not to drink on an empty stomach, right?
Yes, it's bad advice, according to Buteyko.
So Buteyko's take was actually the opposite. That's interesting.
That works for me. In the evening, if I'm going to have a glass of wine, I drink it on its own. And then I got this from Vladimir. At a certain point, I actually feel peckish. I feel hungry. And I just think, okay, that's when I go and make some food. And then I go to bed. And then, of course, I wait a couple of hours and go to bed. I'm completely sober. That process works. If you do it the other way around, have a meal, drink on top, you feel bloated, you feel heavy, you go to bed drunk. It's definitely the way around Vladimir taught me. And I've done it ever since for years. One glass of wine, have a meal, wait, go to bed.
And back in old days, how even now see some people in countryside, they follow this instruction during wedding, etc. During some celebration, they drink, then after they dance, eat a bit, dance, sing, drink, dance again. Physical exercise. They do physical exercise,
That's one of the problems that we're finding with teenagers, is that they're not so physically active. If you go around the swimming pools and look at the bodies these days, and you get a lot of them from Australia here, is that they're very bloated. The tissue's weak. It's kind of translucent, and you can see the blood vessels on the surface. You have stretch marks. young men, teenagers with stretch marks.
Yeah, there seems to be a push into the extremes, right? Because what you're describing is like a generalized sort of decay in the health of the teenagers, but also they're pushed to the extremes. I mean, you just mentioned this extreme exercise is promoted. I guess the point I want to make is like, on the one hand, extreme exercise is promoted, but on the other hand, the general fitness of the teenagers seems to be actually down.
Well, you see it here, because I'm just next to a playing field here. You either see your fat kids who can't really move, or you see the lads that go bodybuilding and taking steroids. And they've got these bodies with completely unnatural muscles. And they may be slim, and they're packed out with a kind of musculature that you would never see in nature. What you're not seeing is the kids I grew up with who weren't fat, but they didn't also look like a Marvel comic character. And so what you're talking about there is just for the movies, for TV shows, they want to sort of promote this extreme human being. But that's what I see here. You're either extremely unhealthy or extreme in another way that's unhealthy. But there's no one just normal, with a normal musculature, with a normal weight, and therefore a normal brain.
Well, they got scoliosis and flat feet, a lot of them.
And you mentioned about women and the pill. I noticed with my nieces, this is just anecdotal, but when they went on the pill, they got fat asses, fat thighs, and big tits.
Yeah, but there's some sort of mimicry of pregnancy. It's like in some way the body behaves as if it's pregnant.
They're not. It's a disaster. It really, it's not healthy, because you're doing something so, dramatic, having such a big effect on the body. This is not a small effect. That's what it is. It's something really, really major. And steroid, corticosteroid, and all the other steroids and so forth, they got books on them and they got experts on them. It's a big subject, and a lot of experts, truth is, no one has a clue. They're not having a clue about this. It's so complicated, right? There's some egghead somewhere in the world who has a good grasp on it. He hasn't got any patience. He has no influence over the treatment system of the world. He might have some understanding of how this is working. But what we have delivering treatment and dealing with this, not a clue.
You're talking about the foods that young men take to do bodybuilding.
Oh, anything you're messing around with the hormones, you really are. Taking prednisolone, it's probably the only solution in many situations that we know of, or they can give the help or whatever. But above and beyond that, when you muck around with the arcade, it's like a Patek Philippe watch, It's not a Timex. You cannot give it to your car mechanic where he get a big screwdriver and try and fix it. This is very, very fine engineering on a scale which is not many people understand. And they don't comprehend it. Never mind know what to do to improve the situation. That they have no clue. But how to even maneuver it without causing some horrible after effects and what do you call them? Unintended consequences. And they're not simple.
I just was curious. I watched about recommendation for bodybuilders for some training, okay? No, people who take part in competitions, okay? Lifting some weight or whatever. No, you know this. Many. And I checked recommendation. It is bullshit, I'm sorry. Every coach said not real stuff from physiology. What I read, okay? I read maybe 100 advices.
It's true.
What the hell? True. They rely on some details what is relevant to health, to how to build muscles.
Yeah, what Vladimir is referring to is the artistic side of bodybuilding, which is an art. If you're into that art, that's one thing. If you're into strength, it's a completely different story. You have one car, which is because you want to pose off and the car is very fancy. but it's not a strong car. It just looks really good, you know. And that's the bodybuilding, and I'm not for it or against it. Some people have naturally a beautiful body. They can do something with it even better. Fine, I don't care. But that technology is a different technology to the technology of making somebody very strong. They are two different things. And the bodybuilder looks very strong, but it's his appearance.
They destroy usually liver, kidneys, all right? Because again, what we discussed already, liver, she has certain capacity.
So we have teenagers who won't do any exercise, and you know they're a mess. We have teenagers who will do the extremes of exercise or want to look really good. So exercise, teenagers, you know, very important for teenagers. What would be Buteyko's recommendation when you train athletes?
Absolutely, yes.
What is the method around that?
And without any damage to their health, you see. Because if they don't understand, they don't know a gist of physiology or how to build muscles without any damage, might fail, might you see, develop some chronic disorders when they quit sport.
Yes,
Okay?
because the common knowledge seems to be that building muscle comes from distraction, right? So you do exercise, you lift weights, and that brings stress and brings a distraction of the tissue, but then the repair is what builds the muscle further. So what will be the connection on working on strength with the Buteyko method, or any sports really? How is that dynamic changed that makes it healthier?
Yes. They understood already. What, for example, if they do some exercise for strength, like lifting some weight, okay, they alternate these exercises with aerobic exercises, like walking around. They understood already. They grasp something. Not everything, but something. But what I read about their food is disaster. And of course, they don't know about drink at all. They use some sort of references to some details what are irrelevant, okay? Again, they don't get this gist, how to build muscles quicker. I'm talking about strength, how to improve strength. I'm not talking about muscles, because to get stronger tendons, you will get more strength than if you build muscles.
That's
Tendons
right.
more important than muscles.
Yes.
Well, they don't know. Maybe somebody, but I never found. And at the same time about food, because many diets, nuts, okay, some lemon, no, some of them of course good, but combination like honey, lemon, nuts, oh bloody hell! And they just follow instructions. Who wrote instructions? I don't know. Just historically follow these instructions, okay? Sorry, when I was young, I could eat everything, all right? Was doing some physical exercise. It didn't matter for me, okay? Because we all know if somebody trained himself or herself, right? Say 8 hours a day, doesn't matter about food, because every bad stuff will be burned. Do you understand? Or some sort of get out with due to bowels movement, because so big amount of carbon dioxide due to physical.
Because you're so physically active that your
yes,
body's carbon dioxide, so your systems all work.
Yes, it can fix it everything. Your system can fix it everything. Can repair. No, of course, I'm not talking about breathing through the mouth. Of course.
When I was training my son, who was playing roller hockey, he was playing inline hockey. He had a problem with his diaphragm, because inline hockey is very fast, and they mouth breathe, and they go on the rink, and they get a few minutes, and it's a fast spurt, and then they come off, they recover, and then they go on again. They go on in lines of 5.
Yes.
And so
I did play as well.
So their diaphragm gets tight if they mouth breathe, and that's what happened to my son. And so he did pauses and learned how to use the rest time to recover his breath after the exertion. So the exertion was like doing maximum pause, and the rest time was controlling the breath to recover before you go on again. And that way he could manage his diaphragm, and it actually gave him more energy and he could perform much better.
Sure.
And so at some point they were going to a big tournament in America, the team were, and one of his members of the team had a back problem. Another one was getting tired, so I met up with them and I started training them to get them ready to go to America. It didn't take long, a couple of weeks, and they performed extremely well.
They were teenagers, right, Marta?
Yes, they were teenagers at the time. They were 14, 15, 16, and the manager was very happy with it.
Sorry, interrupt you. I would like to emphasize what Marta is talking about. It's easy to fix it. She is using this method, particularly for teenagers. Any problem, easy to fix.
Yeah, it's what I was going to ask, is that we're talking about teenagers, is, I mean, they can recover from anything so quickly, right? I mean, I had this teenager student who had problems with her lungs. I mean, in 2-3 weeks, she was like running, everything was normal, and she was feeling pretty bad, really, really bad. At the beginning, she was like control pulse of 15, really struggling to do any exercise, and she was in bad shape with the lungs. In 2-3 weeks, she was like feeling like another person. Her grandmother was in the same course with COPD. And of course, it takes much longer and much more work. But the control pulse was about the same. But obviously, with teenagers, it's just the physiology just shoots off and is resolved in no time, because we are tapping into something that is so fundamental that when it gets solved, is just like no problem.
No, yes, because nature takes care of young people, right? Immune system so strong. For babies, the most strong. For kids, no, a bit less. For teenagers, still strong. And plus, body ready to any change. Particularly when body is growing, right? Easy to implement anything. To develop new habit, okay, easy. For adults, okay, when body stops to see growing, difficult to change.
So
what about autism?
Well, that's the physical side. I was going to come on to that.
Because according to, the doctor I listened to, he says, because he was a specialist in autism for 40 years, he says within 10 years, there will be no boys born who are not autistic. That's how bad it's getting. So I think maybe there might be a way of offering the Buteyko method, because there are so many parents of teenagers, particularly boys, because testosterone has an effect in causing causing autism. But this might be something that could be offered that would be of interest to parents of autistic children. We
just put a testimony up on the YouTube channel with a mother talking about reversing autism with her 4-year-old.
Oh, great.
And the earlier you get it, the better.
Sure, of course.
But all learning difficulties, because the incidence of learning problems, learning difficulties is on the rise. It has been over the last 20 years. It's huge. I mean, we hardly had, relatively speaking, when I first started teaching, we didn't really have learning difficulties, not like we do now.
Well, it's the MMR vaccine, isn't it? A big part of it.
Well, I don't know what it is, but, whether hyperventilation has a lot to do with it.
I heard about it, yes.
The MMR is toxic, so...
Yes, but
because back on old days, no one had, okay?
No, I mean, I've seen children being vaccinated and they start producing chronic symptoms immediately. They got snotty nose, they get a fever, they are suffering.
I never met, some boy or girl with autism back in old days when I was, in Russia. No one.
No, there wasn't any autism.
We never heard about this, okay?
You've got the toxic metals in it, because I've listened to hours of lectures on this. There's the toxic metals in them, like mercury, which was then replaced with aluminium, which is no better. And then you've actually got the live viruses in it. They've found live measles viruses in the guts of children with autism. And then you add on the fact that they're being given at least three vaccines all in one go when they're only a few months old. So they're have not developed. So then you hit them with this. So if the parents are already sick, and we would say already hyperventilating and toxic, but this doctor would talk mainly about the toxins and the viruses that the parents are carrying. So the child is born already on the edge But if you didn't give them the MMR vaccine, they'd probably be okay. But then you hit them with the MMR, bang. That's the final nail in the coffin. It's not just the MMR.
And they're also finding that Afro-Caribbean children are more prone to autism if the MMR is given before they're 3 years old for some reason. And there's a huge number in London of black kids with autism, and they tend to be very big and very difficult to manage, incredibly difficult to live with. It's a huge problem in London now.
Yeah, you mentioned the other day, Martha, that some parents have to give up their children to some institution because they can just not cope. Yeah.
There's a lot of that happening in England now. It's happening all over the world, and the parents can't cope with the situation. So, I mean, as a teacher, the incidence of agitation, poor concentration, ability to think, reason, and then of course there's dyslexia, dyspraxia, ADHD, ADD, autism. All of these things are becoming more and more common.
Again, this guy was saying that some of these children are so sensitive that the only thing the amount of stimulation they can handle is they have to sit in a darkened room with a smooth piece of wood. That's all they can handle. That's the total stimulation they can manage. Now, again, we know that with decent carbon dioxide levels, I mean, I noticed this when I was ill, light affected me, a noise would affect me, someone walking in the room who's speaking too loud would affect me. As soon as I raised my carbon dioxide levels, suddenly my ability to cope with external stimulus went up accordingly.
Yeah,
so,
same here. But I find in the children in my own family have got a very strong startle, so it doesn't. Their nervous system is very, very sensitive, and they're easily, with any kind of stimulation, you can see that their nervous system is overexcited. So it's the excitability of the nervous system that we're up against, and that's reversed by using carbon dioxide. And with kids, we're doing physical pauses, physical steps, and physical exercise is the best way to reverse it. And it doesn't take that long, makes a big difference. And we've got great results. I mean, kids find that they can communicate much better with their families and their friends. They are more autonomous themselves. They can make their own decisions for themselves. They can engage in interests, their own interests they can develop, rather than being distracted by the activities of things around them, stimulus around them. They can't, quite a lot of the time, they can't actually focus on what they're interested in because there's too much going on around them that distracts them. So they don't have themselves. They can't actually explore their own skills because there's too much pushed around because their nervous system's too hypersensitive, and they get overwhelmed very, very easily. This is all causing hyperventilation. I mean, the vaccines cause hyperventilation. The computer games cause hyperventilation. The disease is hyperventilation. So
yes, imagine you have emotions, but you don't active at all. No physical side, just emotions. What?
Yeah.
I've sat behind Lucas, the boy I brought up, while he's playing these games, and they're like shooting people, and they're running away from people that are shooting at them, but they're not moving. They're sat in a chair. So every natural instinct you would have in a war situation, which is what is being recreated on the screen, you're not able to have the physical movement that would be involved. You'd either be running as the predator or you'd be running as the prey. You would not be sitting in a chair. So
well, you're making a very important point, because what's being produced is adrenaline.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then you need to do physical exercise to work it off, otherwise it becomes a poison. And a lot of the teenagers are collecting this as a poison.
Yes. What Buteyko said, why stress is bad? Due to this, adrenaline and sugar, excess of sugar. It should be released.
Going to say, when you get a teenager that's done a lot of computer games and a lot of sitting around, has a lot of adrenaline, most of the cleansing is discharging the poison from the adrenaline.
And you combine Red Bull and other fizzy drinks. So yeah, liquid sugar. Yeah, it's just an atomic combination.
So it doesn't
Yes.
take very long for them to lose their addictive mechanism, you know, because the problem is with this kind of nervous system, the tendency is to develop addictions, and so that leads into the sugar addiction, then the food problems, and then we've got alcohol problems and drug problems that they get caught up in, because all of these things calm the nervous system temporarily.
And then blue light from the screens, and then you've got modern light bulbs, which don't give you the full spectrum. So again, that's more stimulation, more imbalance. It's just.
And then what we're finding now amongst young people is that they're taking these drugs called benzodiazepines, and they're prescription drugs. They're being given out, those prescriptions are being given out for insomnia and depression, and they are consciousness changers, and they damage the GABA receptors. And so in the long term, they go crazy, they go up the wall. And what we're finding is to get off these benzodiazepines is worse than getting off heroin.
I was just going to say, I think we had this conversation. I listened to a program on Radio 4 about 5 years ago where they were actually discussing, is it even possible? It's so rare for people to be able to get off benzodiazepines. The actual topic of the radio show was, is it even possible? Because, you know, Jordan Peterson, he was recently on benzodiazepines and they nearly killed him. And this is a guy who's exactly my age with a huge amount of self-discipline. And he nearly died trying to get off benzodiazepines. They're lethal.
They're deadly, they're lethal.
And they are addictive beyond anybody's comprehension. You remember Jonathan? That was the one thing he couldn't kick, was the benzodiazepines. We got him off the opiates, we got him off everything, but he would never come off the benzodiazepines. You remember Geddes?
So with the boys, because of the testosterone, they tend to breathe deeper. They are more prone to hyperventilation. Whereas the girls, their problems are more to do with self-image, low self-esteem, and the hormonal problems. Like they have problems with their periods and menstruation. That gets sorted out in no time at all. The nervous system calms down quite quickly, and their behaviour changes very quickly. They're less needy, less demanding. Well, there's the other thing of, you know, just being able to get through without having colds and flu, without allergic reactions, with the various breathing problems that they might develop, because some of the teenagers, they've got asthma, they've got bronchitis. Any of these chronic symptoms, there's an increasing incidence of diabetes.
And then there's the topic we're not supposed to talk about. There's the COVID vaccine and heart inflammation. This is a new danger for young people now.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they're starting with 5 years old, so imagine what that's going to do.
Cool. And for sportsmen, okay, what Marta mentioned, ice hockey. I read sometimes young people, teenagers die during training.
Yeah. Well, I think it's 103 footballers have died now.
Initially, they had a relatively good health because, they could run so fast for long distance, all right?
Well, then there's the thing of exam anxiety. It's really good for that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Any kind of challenge, it's really good for that. And I mean, really, that's one of the problems, is that kids won't come up against challenges because they're terrified of failing.
Sure, yes, it's true.
And you don't learn anything unless you're challenged and make mistakes.
That's a very good point.
Yes, very good and big problem, by the way.
It's a huge problem.
Huge problem.
So
they can't face any exam.
Yeah, carbon dioxide gives people courage. And,
yes.
And relaxation, and it clears brain fog. So it gives you a clear mind. So all those three things together give you much higher performance, mentally and physically. Which I think
it's very important, yes, for students, for whatever, yes.
So, you know, and we're in this era where people are being congratulated for doing very small tasks, not particularly complicated. And we're really undermining the capacity of the human brain and the human body at the moment. The level of achievement is very poor compared to what it was when I started teaching. The level I was teaching was much higher than it is now in mainstream schools.
pupils can't comprehend right now.
But also the curriculum's being changed. They're not expected.
Mm.
They're not taken to those levels, and they're not encouraged, or
They're being protected from failure. They're being mollycoddled.
they are. That's
Mhm.
being mollycoddled. That's right.
Yeah.
And they're being given positive feedback for very little achievements, very small achievements.
Or for no achievements at all.
Mm.
So, you know, and I wouldn't have congratulated my kids, the ones I taught, for the sorts of things they achieve these days. I'd be congratulating them for something significant.
Yeah, I think it's very important to keep that balance where they feel encouraged, but also they're pushed to
Yeah.
achieve.
You've got to do both. You encourage, you congratulate, and at the same time you move them towards the challenges.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes, I mean, that kind of sense of satisfaction that you get when you are a teenager. In my case, my experience was with sports, where I worked really hard. I was a swimmer, and when you get a result, you get this. It's almost like this really expansive experience of self-worth and value. And it's not that you're more or less than any other human being. You just have this sense that there is a reward when there is an effort. Yeah. And also you have to go through all the frustrations. So you're growing up, and sometimes your development stops, you know, and you're kind of stuck. And it's ridiculous because you're 14 and you think like, oh, I'm never gonna get there. And then one day you just shoot off, and everything is like just is incredible experience. But you have to keep on the training, and know that there is a step further. Yeah.
It's about making it to the breakthrough.
Oh, I met many young sportsmen who show very great result during training, and they failed during competitions.
Yeah, and that mental aspect, I'm sure there's Buteyko strategies that can help them too, because that doesn't make sense, right? I've known that too, like swimmers who in training, they go just lightning, and the opposite too. Swimmers who you think like, this guy's lazy, because then he goes to the competition and beats everybody, yeah? And I mean, this dynamics, everything you mentioned for teenagers gets solved very quickly, unless in something really major that can also be solved, but it gets solved very quickly. So parents should pay attention to this method, and they should do it themselves first, and then recommend it and support their children on doing it.
Teenagers can do themselves. Why? I'm talking about 14 years old, 15 years old. What? If they have motivation, they would like to break record, for example, in sport, or to pass good exams without easier. Of course, it's such a motivation.
The other thing is that they look much more beautiful. Well, they do. They all look much better looking.
Yeah.
Boys or girls. The face changes. The bone structure comes through. They lose their bloating. The quality of their hair gets brighter.
Eyes glittering, yes, sparkling.
Eyes are shining and sparkling.
It's beauty therapy, but also older people. I mean, my aunts, they're in their 70s, and they look younger, and it's very interesting to observe the progression, right? Because it's the eyes that is the last one. So if you have a bit of a puffy eyes, that's the last bit that becomes, so the whole face kind of changes, start kind of shining, being younger, and then but still the eyes, you can see there's still a little bit, and then just the whole face becomes more luminous, more open, brighter. It's the skin changes,
and they're more attractive. So then, of course, an attractive person is going to be more successful. They always are.
That's right.
Yes. When the level of CO2 goes up, level of energy goes up. That's why everything about energy, okay.
What tells you that your organism is in a healthy state is the level of energy that you have.
Absolutely, yes.
It's not
energy leads to some confidential state. You're confident because you've got energy, right? Okay, you might fail now, but you know you can repeat tomorrow because you've got energy.
Yes.
Yes, and you don't get, okay, so you fail an exam, doesn't mean you can't redo it.
Yeah, of course.
You know, so what? You can just shrug things off much more easily.
Yes, correct. Yes.
I mean, what about depression and things like that for teenagers? That's like a big deal.
Oh, that's gone in no time. Mood is much better very quickly. And their self-worth, their sense of self-worth improves. And they're not so bothered about criticism. They don't take things so personally. That's a sign of an overexcited nervous system.
Oh, totally. Yeah. This is absolutely true. This is one of the things that I have noticed as an adult man. One of the most noticeable things is in the past, I would already as an adult man in my 30s, I will say something in a party or something, and then I will torture myself thinking, oh, maybe I offended somebody and things like that. Yeah, and I don't have that at all anymore. No, there's a physiological basis for all those reactions.
Well, you're not worried about not being liked.
Exactly.
It's a big thing, because as a teenager, you're terrified that you're not going to be liked, and you modify your behavior in order to do things in order to get other people's approval. And so as you increase your carbon dioxide level, you're not so concerned about other people's approval, and you become more interested in what you're interested in and what actually gives you pleasure. And then you actually become much more effective because you're exploring your own skills and you're going to steer yourself in the direction of what you're good at. And you won't be so bothered about taking on things that you're not so good at. You'll have a go anyway.
Well, this thing of depression is interesting because one thing I always remember Chris saying, if you think there's something wrong with the world, it means your carbon dioxide levels have dropped. And, often, I'll wake up in the morning and, with what's going on in the world at the moment, and I'm dealing with my allergies again at the moment. I've got all kinds of reasons not to feel good about the world. But I know if I do some practice, I'm going to be all right. And you could even say it would sound unbelievable, but you could say to a teenager who gets depression and anxiety, within 10 minutes, you could get rid of that. Just with a 10-minute practice, you could move it on so that you felt comfortable, relaxed, and at ease. That's all it takes. You tell me even a drug can't do that for you. And this is healthy. There's no side effects to this. You might have to do it again an hour or half an hour even later, but the point is you can get almost instant relief. I don't know anything else that does that.
Yes. We're all different. It's about perception of the world. How people perceive, okay? And you can change this picture. Yes. You can be glad to see some butterfly, or you might be upset to lose $1 million despite $10 million left. You see, it's different perception. That's it.
A very relaxed, very happy person can face death, even the ultimate loss. Sure. And some people, I've gone through times in my life where I felt like someone's holding a gun to my head the whole time. And when I was very ill, that's how I felt.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that I don't have that experience anymore, but I've been there, and I'm sure a lot of young people are in that situation.
Yeah, to improve or increase composure, self-importance, okay, they need that. Confidence, they need that. They should learn Buteyko method, of course.
So I was talking to a mother about whether or not her kids would be interviewed, and she said that she put it to them and she didn't get any feedback. But what she did get from one of the other mothers in the community was that her daughter finds her children very easy to get on with, that they're kind of sensible, they reason in an orderly way, they can talk to them, they don't do things that upset other people.
Yeah, to my knowledge, I asked many teenagers back in old days, right? Who she had higher control poles, no even aggressive thought, you see. They didn't have any aggressive thought. Well, just because I asked people, teenagers, right? Ask how about to rob somebody, right? To steal something. Why do you think about that? Answer was, okay, why do you think about that? What's the subject? Okay. Different mentality was changed. Way of thinking was changed.
Yes.
Like they was surprised, or they, what? What's the question? Stupid question. Before they were, I would say, hooligans. I was a wrestler, right? and some police asked me to help some young boys. Okay, they were hooligans, but at the same time I knew already Buteyko, and I did combine. I trained them such a restless, right? The same time before and after they practice very hard. Okay, easy for them. They were such a characters, all right? Hooligans. They're not shy people, right? But age was 12, 13 years old, okay, like this. And after I repeated questions. After half year, I again asked the same questions what I asked before, and they were surprised. What the stupid questions you asked me? But before it wasn't so stupid questions before, right? Because they did. They stole. They beat people. Okay, hooligans. What?
So they engaged in violence, and then they did the method, and then later, when you asked them,
Yes.
it was outrageous for them to have.
Yes, outrageous. Yes, precisely.
Yeah.
What? They did forget. Okay, about their past and different mentality. You see.
Yeah, that's very interesting because people actually that's actually a very interesting phenomenon because people tend to forget how bad they were feeling before. Yeah. So it's like this gradual betterment of their health. And unless you kind of have consistently told the story and you purposefully sort of have a memory, it's that when you have pain, you forget the pain. I guess it's a defense mechanism of the body that doesn't want to remember that, right? But it's very clear that the difference is enormous. And that's a very interesting story.
I was going to say, to me, that's a definition of a genuine cure. If you don't remember that you had a problem.
Sure.
And I often remember saying to students we had that they were complaining about something, and I'd say to them, in a few months' time, you won't even remember you had that. And I'd remind them. And they go, yeah, right. I never think about that anymore.
Yeah, it's very difficult for me to recall how bad I was. I'm thinking, oh, I can run all the time with no problem, okay. Yeah. I can do shallow breathing, but no, of course I can recall, right? But it's like, it looks like, okay, in different life, okay, not in life of somebody else.
The good thing about that is that what you thought it was normal before, now it becomes completely unacceptable.
Absolutely.
Some people start with a control pause of 12. When they get to 20, they're like a different person. If I get to a control pause of 30, I start feeling it's not okay. I need to raise that because it's just like you get that strange feeling that something's off. Yeah, at 30. But of course, it's if you're used to a control pause of 12, when you're 20, it's amazing. And once you get to 30, 20 is unacceptable again. And it's like a completely different world.
What happened to, okay, some guys broke some tennis rules, right? Whatever. Oh, it happened between French guy and other French people, right? I was just different nationality, just one person, right? And they began arguing, okay, like they threat each other, okay, like, oh, I'm going to punch you. And I saw this situation. I began laughing, or I'm sorry.
Once the control pause gets as low as 15 seconds, then the level of aggression goes up.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, fight or flight mechanism, like completely fired up. And you're touching upon something that I think for martial artists, which also many teenagers could get into, which is a really, really good thing. But the ultimate skill is how to avoid conflict, how to not get into the conflict in the first place, and use your skills only when absolutely necessary. And if you have that sort of calm center, you're going to be able to act with much more control and rationality in a potentially dangerous situation, and not being non-reactive is very important, because you could have someone like in your face and you could manage that situation much better because you don't get into their face back and the fight doesn't start. Yeah. And you don't have that sense of pride that comes with someone coming at you and you're like, well, why is this person attacking me? I'm going to attack them. No, you know that the best thing is to get rid of your ego and get out of that situation,
Sure.
because you get into a very stupid situation. Yeah, if you do that.
You active with some compassion. Even you can beat somebody, but with compassion, and just maybe just enough, just to stop fighting whatever. That's why back in old days, guru of Arshomat, first they try to minimize ego, to get rid of self-importance of students. That's why students, you see, they washed floors, they cooked for teacher, they did everything, okay? Because teacher wanted to humiliate student. After humiliation, usually ego diminished. It's what like I know about St. Petersburg, right? People, many of them died during siege of Hitler in Germany, right? From starvation. 2 million people died, by the way. And who survived? Bloody hell. They don't have ego at all. Now, most of them dead, but back in old days, when I was teenager, I visited the city, right? And I took eyes to see sparkling. They're so kind, smile all the time. What? They went through the hell, and they didn't have any ego.
Your mother was in
Yes.
Leningrad during that time, was she not?
Yes. Mother, she loved children, everyone who she asked her to help, she was ready. Okay, like, oh, children, oh, you just put your head on somebody, some kid, oh, it's not good. She was talking to many people about that. Like, she had inside big love, okay, I don't know how to explain. To everyone, not to me. Sometimes I was, even I had jealousy, okay?
Yes.
Because she sometimes exposed big love to somebody else, right? Somebody, some kid, okay?
I think that's very interesting. So what you're saying is, because there's two possibilities. What you're saying is that people who survived the siege of Leningrad, they had certain characteristics that allow them to survive, that were on the side of love, so to say, of acceptance, of like some sort of intrinsic happiness and love for others. Is that what you're saying? Or are you saying...
Look, I try to put some more details.
Yeah.
If somebody angry, right, it's difficult for this person to survive. Because it was going on and on.
Yeah.
People should accept the situation. They should understand. They should die every time, okay? They should understand, should accept. With big ego, it's impossible to accept. They should get rid of even personality. Like, yes, okay, I'm ready to die. I'm nobody. I'm not important person, right? Many people think like this. I'm very important person, okay? Particularly teenagers. Yes? They are not wise. This method can you see diminish any ego.
The siege of Leningrad lasted 872 days.
Yes, and I forget how many people, maybe 2 million or whatever, they died.
So, I mean, those that survived would have conserved all their energy, and they would have developed their core energy. And it's interesting because when you meet people that have been through that kind of extreme experience, they come through as radiant people quite often, because they give up altogether. They're not trying to prove anything, because
no,
that's what I was going to ask, because
they are impartial, they are indifferent to bad things, and they just looking for good, okay?
Yeah.
They don't blame anyone, okay? Like, no, they just they like this moment of life. That's it.
Yeah, I had a great uncle who went through the whole First World War, went through all the battles, major battles. And he used to drive my father mad because he had no ambition at all, as my father was quite ambitious. And so after the war, his attitude was, I'm just going to live every day, which meant he didn't work very much. So everybody in the family had to give him money and look after his farm for him, because he was, like we were talking earlier, looking at the butterflies, going to the pub, having a beer, having a laugh with his friends. It completely made him someone who just lived in the moment, because he'd been looking, he'd seen so much death and he'd had to face his own death every day, not knowing if he's going to survive to the evening. And that was for 4 years. At the end of it, he had no ego, and he had no interest in past or future. He lived every day as if it was his last. The irony was his nickname was Tiger. He's known as Uncle Tiger. And he had tattoos and stuff in the days when only soldiers and sailors had tattoos. But apparently he was a real warrior in the war, but everybody said he was the most gentle human being after the war. That's what it made him. It made him a very calm person.
Good. That was great. Very interesting conversation. Not just about teenagers, but so much, right? Even about Leningrad and how to survive a siege when it's coming. If you want to learn more about the method, you can go to the website www.learnbuteykoonline.net, where you can find all the courses, all the webinars. You can make a webinar. You can attend a webinar for free. And you can also go to the YouTube channel of learnbuteyko.com. Also, Martha Rowe's channel is full of testimonials of what the method can do for you. And thank you so much to each and every one of you, Vladimir, Martha, Joe, also Irene and Christopher. And we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you, Javier. Thank you, Martha, Joseph. Thank you. See you next time. Bye-bye.
And do not miss our next episode, where we are going to talk with 2 teenagers who have actually done the method themselves, and they're going to give us their perspective on what the method has done for them. Until then, stay classy, San Diego.